Top 5 transfer portal QB fixer-uppers. These are guys who, aren't the Cam Wards and Kyle McCords and Will Howards of the world, but guys who have had some success, but have had maybe ups and downs, and getting to a new program might help them reach their full potential. Number 5. Will Rogers, who had a down year through injuries this year. If he's healthy, he's shown he can rip it up, especially in the Mike Leach air raid style offense. So if he winds up with a school that's running that, that would be a huge thing for them. Again, if he is healthy, although he kind of battled through an elbow injury this year, and we'll see. But Will Rogers, one that I'm very intrigued to see where he ends up and if he is ready to go to help somebody, because this isn't necessarily a fixture-upper like maybe some of the other guys on this list are, but this is one, if this dude's healthy, he can sling it around the yard.
Yeah, Mississippi State just wasn't right this year, and they got put into a real pickle there with the passing of Mike Leach, and then they pivot, make a mistake in hindsight as far as their next hire goes, and they remedied that very quickly by moving on and going and grabbing Jeff Lebby. But I did see, I guess it was yesterday, that Washington is a potential landing spot for Will Rogers. So I found that very interesting, obviously, given what they're doing on offense and the year Michael Penix had. And so that would be a very interesting spot. And not only that, but he's visiting them, and he's also going with one of his wide receivers in Jaquavius Marks. So a little package.
Running back,
excuse me, yes. So maybe a little bit of a package opportunity there for the Huskies, but we'll see. But yeah, he's an interesting name that's out there, but not getting nearly as much shine as a lot of the others.
Yeah, absolutely. Number 4, remember this guy? Hank Bachmeier. He was at Boise State, beat Florida State, and pretty much ended Willie Taggart's career there. I think that one was... it
wasn't him, it would have been somebody else probably.
No, but I remember watching the thing, and FSU is spending all this time in this special cooling thing that Willie Taggart had brought in for him, which is great because it's hotter than crap in Tallahassee in the summer. And Boise State, who doesn't have to deal with that weather, was in their indoor facility pumping humidity and heat into it.
That was a season opener.
Yeah, it was a season opener.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, how did the team from Boise deal with the humidity better than you? And you live in it, man.
Yeah.
But that was Hank Bachmeier's kind of shining moment of his career. He was at Boise. Then he's been at Louisiana Tech. Now he's on his way to Wake Forest, actually. And can the slow mesh turn Hank into somebody who's consistent? We'll see. Dave Clawson's done a great job with guys that he's had in there this year, obviously notwithstanding. But yeah, this is an interesting one to me. The Hank Bachmeier, who's now on his 3rd stop, and Wake Forest under Dave Clawson, who's a really solid coach, might be able to do something with him.
Well, how much in 10 years will the average amount of programs a quarterback ends up playing for?
Probably 6. No.
2.5?
Yeah, 2.
2.5 probably?
I mean, how many years of eligibility are guys going to have at this point? Once the COVID years end, what's that even look like by that point 2 years down the road further into college athletics? I mean, hey, who's to say? But the record books are going to need lots of asterisks.
Yeah.
Because of the guys who played back in the day, who did 4 years worth of stuff, and the guys who have 6, 7 years. But I'm glad that I thought for a second, because Will Rogers is uncommitted, I thought that you were, for a second, I forgot the topic, and I was like, Hank Bachmeier committed 3 days ago. You had that. Good. Okay,
There's guys on this list that are
cool. I was concerned for a second there, but he had a really good 2021, threw for over 3,000 yards. And then last year, had a pretty respectable year with La Tech. Obviously got Sonny Cumbie there as your head coach. There was slinging around with him a little bit, but really, really good a couple years ago. And we'll see if he can, going into a 6th year now, rekindle some of that magic, as you said, with the fit there out in North Carolina. And a nice opportunity for him.
Yeah, actually, the next, all the rest of the guys are committed. Will Rogers was the only one who wasn't. Number 3, Tyler Shough. This one, fixer-upper, isn't really about skill. We've seen it when he's healthy. Fun to watch. But Louisville will be the school that can hopefully be the first one that can keep him on the field for more than 5 or 6 games at a stretch. Mm-hmm. So that would be the fixer-upper there. He's shown flashes of I'll just say it, brilliance at times where, man, this guy's, can really create and do a lot of things. And
I thought coming off how he ended last year and the momentum, and of course it did not happen. But yeah, he became a dual threat quarterback.
To me, look, if you're like Jack Plummer had a great year and he was a bus driver for Jeff Brom. Tyler Shough's got a wider skill set than Jack Plummer does. And I'm not trying to knock Jack Plummer. I'm just stating the fact, if you can keep him healthy in that offense, he can have some fun.
Yeah, I mean, Jack Plummer was fine, but, he had some moments that weren't so good, and I think that Louisville was able to overcome some of those things at times, like turnovers, specifically what I'm talking about. But yeah, I mean, Tyler Shough, the big thing with him is just staying healthy, guys. I mean, that's pretty much it. I mean, it's the reason he's still around in college football, I think, and not having gone and tried to ply his trade in the pros at this stage, given that it's not going to be year number 6 for him. Just unfortunate the way that it worked out in Lubbock, because that Oregon game, that interception there at the end was just brutal, and it didn't end up costing them a bowl game because they got the 6 wins, but that could have been just on the opposite spectrum, like a huge win for Joey McGuire. Yeah. That also changes the whole Oregon conversation the rest of the year with them in the playoff and Washington and all of that. But Tyler Shough's a good player. Texas Tech needed to move on, though. I mean, they had to give. You'd had him there for 3 years, and I think you'd about seen what you needed to see, and now you've got Baron Morton, Will Hammond, and others to focus in on. But he's really good at his best, and he can, have some deficiencies like anybody else. But the big thing with him is, can he be healthy? And if he can, then Louisville can, have some good things happen.
Number 2, Blake Shapen. Look, he's interesting in a lot of different regards, and not just because we covered him his whole career here, but he was as good as persona non grata for a lot of Baylor fans at the end of 2022.
You mean he was Charlie Brewer 2020?
Blake Shapen's the biggest problem. This team needs to move on. Oh, my God. Sawyer Robertson, he was at Mississippi State. That's got to be better, right? Oh, Blake Shapen's the issue. Blake Shapen's the issue. If you ask most fans, what's the biggest deal? It's Shapen. Then you get a few games into this year, you're like, what's the least amount of their problems? They're like, well, right now it's Blake Shapen.
Well,
and
we got into there and we saw Sawyer Robertson, and everybody's like, bring Blake back. Yeah,
so,
idiots.
And he's had some really exciting, the Big 12 championship game, elite moments. He's had some really good, consistent ones. But given the flux the roster's been in the last 2 years, and him just growing as a quarterback, I think it's better for everybody that him and Baylor that he moved on, because they're not going to try to fit him into a hole. He's the square peg in a round hole anymore.
The last time Baylor had a quarterback finish his career healthy and or popular.
Yeah, they've
Bryce Petty or Nick Bryce Petty?
It was Bryce Petty.
Bryce Petty, yeah. And then they've kind of got A&M disease too. A&M's got that.
Zeno.
That's only because Russell got hurt. It would be Seth Russell, but you said injured. Yeah.
Injured it's nuts, the kind of attrition they've had.
Shapen already split the fans because some people wanted Bohannon back, and there had to be a choice there because you couldn't have both of them, and some felt like it should have been Gary. And you know what? 2 years ago, Gary probably would have been the better choice.
Yeah.
But then beyond that, what you did have as far as support dwindled when you have losses stacking up. Weren't a lot of complaints when they were like, starting off 2 years ago, and they were very much in bowl contention. Then you had that second half slide, and that continued into this year. And
the West Virginia loss is the one
but that game he got hurt. Otherwise,
but he fumbled the ball near midfield.
But he did, and so there was just frustrations with him, very much like Charlie Brewer. I think he's a really solid player. I don't think he's like a great quarterback, but he's a really solid player. And if he doesn't have to be the guy all the time and do everything and be Superman, like, if Jeff Lebby can get a line that actually blocks for him and gives him time to scan the field,
he'll be okay.
And he's not running around for his life, I think he could be pretty good for you.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see what Blake can do in that offense, and with hopefully a bit more protection around him. And he works really hard. I hated that it ended kind of how it did, and that the fans soured the way that some of them, not all of them, but some of them did. And so I'm excited that he's got a new opportunity, and I'm excited for Baylor to have a new look as well at quarterback, because I think it was needed on both sides.
So since 2015 was the last time that Baylor had a quarterback end the year healthy and popular.
Yeah, well, that happens.
I brought 8 years.
No, I understand that. I think the more interesting conversation I brought up a few weeks ago is that they haven't had a guy finish his career here in 8 years. They've all transferred out. I think that's actually more interesting because the popularity thing, that's so subjective. And again, that gets into like, the worst of the worst on social media are the ones that we focus in on. But you're right.
Not because he's a fan favorite, but because he was good.
Right.
And it would be Seth Russell in 2015. Yeah.
All right. Number 1, Tyler Van Dyke. Now, look, if Tyler Van Dyke was on the quarterback assembly line, 6'4", 226, gigantic arm talent, mobile enough. I mean, not a statue. You would like, I want the 2021 Tyler Van Dyke.
When he's walking off the bus, you drool.
Absolutely. I mean, he's perfect at that. But right now, if he were a car, he'd have trouble starting and finishing. He just got all wonky. Injuries played a huge part in that. In 2022, 2023, the offensive line was a lot better, but he kept turning the ball over. But if Phil Longo can fix those problems, which a lot of them are footwork, a lot of them are mental, a lot of them, all those things, that Tyler Van Dyke could be the best one in this class. But we'll see how that goes at Wisconsin. Hopefully he's about to adjust to the exact opposite weather that he's going to get in Wisconsin. But this one I'm very intrigued by because he is very talented, but has not put it together the last couple years.
Yeah, I mean, he's gone a couple of years without having sort of that big impact, as you pointed out. 2021 was a really good year for him. 2022, a little bit more hit or miss, and then this past year, just too many turnovers, man. Too many interceptions that were costly for them, and that was not at all what was expected. But I mean, like you said, he's solidly built. I mean, a big old dude. Now he's not going to be a running threat for you. He's a passer first and foremost, and above all. But I mean, in Wisconsin in the Big Ten, I mean, whatever that's going to look like in this new iteration of the Big 12, now that you have the influx of the Pac schools, I mean, I don't know quite what to expect of the whole landscape out there, other than Michigan and Ohio State will be your favorites again. But excited to see if he can make a bit more of an impact than Tanner Mordecai ended up making, because Tanner got hurt and didn't quite get to flesh out that year as well as we would have liked to have seen for a guy that we followed for a long time. But there's definitely potential up there with that team, with that offense. And, we'll see what he can do. But I think that's a solid pickup.
I'm done with Tanner because they